In the 16th century, a time when the English began to colonize North America, the Native Americans would scour the land and establish their territory to make themselves a home. The Native Americans would find themselves a place they called Silent Hill. They believed that the place they inhabited possessed sacred grounds with spiritual power, conducting rituals to seek out this mysterious power from the sacred land. These would see practices such as resurrection, exorcism, healing immortal wounds and diseases, and communication with creatures beyond the plane of existence. Because of this supernatural and spiritual power from the land they inhabited, they deemed Silent Hill the place of silent spirits. However, this peace and prosperity didn't last long, as the English settlers would eventually drive away and exile the natives from their land, stealing and claiming Silent Hill for themselves. Because of the English settlers' ignorance of the sacred land and lack of knowledge of the town's spiritual and supernatural energy, it would result in consequences that the English settlers could not prepare for what was about to come in the years ahead of them. During this time, an inhabitant who resided in the town of Silent Hill, Jennifer Carroll, grew curious and fascinated by the town's spiritual properties that others couldn't see. This compelled her to research and discover much of the town's spiritual power, so much so that she decided to become one of the founding members and form a cult called the Order. This cult would practice and teach these beliefs they held regarding the town's supernatural and spiritual nature in secrecy, as a means to avoid conflict and direct contact with other religious groups that would hold them trial for practicing and performing witchcraft. Time eventually caught up with Jennifer Carroll, as she would be held trial and burned at the stake due to her reputation for performing witchcraft. While Jennifer's life came to an end, her followers of the cult grew to become fond of her practices and closely studied her teachings. She was hailed as a saint and held as a martyr, immortalized with her own statue in Rosewater Park. In the 17th century, a mysterious disease grew and spread like wildfire across the town, infecting most of the town's inhabitants, resulting in the town becoming abandoned. 100 years would pass, where time would see a civil war break out, resulting in the town of Silent Hill to partake in it. Subsequently, the town itself resettles into a penal colony and Silent Hill Prison is constructed. In response to a startling new disease, Brookhaven Hospital is constructed to foster and care for inhabitants who suffer from the deadly illness. Eventually, the American Civil War commences, resulting in the residents of Silent Hill fighting in the war. The Civil War would lead to the closure of Silent Hill Prison due to the high volume of prisoners of war, and the construction of Toluca Prison, housing 2 floors of cell blocks for prisoners on the opposing side of the war. Because of the prior events, such as the onslaught of death that was fostered due to the result of war or the mysterious disease that created an epidemic for the residents of Silent Hill, it's believed that the death that was held from the thoughts of the prisoners and townspeople harbored this dark, negative energy that grew from collective subconscious thoughts that manifested into the town's distortion. The events to follow in the town of Silent Hill become dark and ominous, as over the years, people mysteriously go missing, a ship called the Little Baroness sinking shortly after it sets sail into Toluca Lake, or the mayor of Silent Hill dying suddenly, leading every staff member in the development group to die abruptly. A father who would go through hell and back to save his daughter in this psychological nightmare through a town desolate of life and silence in its ambience. Harry Mason, a competent, devoted, loving father who would risk his life for those he cares about deeply, journeys into the horrors of the unknown. Before the nightmare, Harry Mason was a run-of-the-mill writer who was in a relationship with his wife, Jody Mason. According to the Silent Hill novelization, Harry met Jody in high school at the beginning of their sophomore year. After Jody broke up with her previous boyfriend, Harry gained the confidence to ask her out, and they eventually both fell in love. Not too long after, they both were newlywed at their wedding and spent a peaceful and loving 9 years together, which was described as a never-ending honeymoon. At the age of 25, Harry and Jody were both traveling on the highway and abruptly stumbled upon a baby on the side of the road. Seeing as there was no one around to watch and take care of this baby, Harry and Jody agreed to adopt the baby themselves and named her Cheryl Mason. And this new beginning for the family only led to tragedy, as shortly after, Jody succumbed to an unknown illness and died suddenly. In this time of grief and loss, Harry would make a promise to his wife to take care of Cheryl and would do so for the next 4 years alone. During these short, peaceful years of Cheryl, Harry would develop a fear of kidnappers, murderers, and child abusers. Due to this, Harry would keep a licensed handgun inside his Jeep's glove compartment for self-defense. Furthermore, Harry would write a novel titled The Criminal's Mask, an analysis of offenders and predators who would go unnoticed in small communities and rural areas under the guise of normal citizens. According to Harry, if guns were to disappear from America, crime would not allowing him to protect his daughter. alluding to Harry having a pessimistic view on humanity due to a troubling past of hardship earlier in his life. When he was 32 years old, Harry was still in deep grief and despair over the loss of his wife. Cheryl, who is now 7 years old, took notice of this and convinced Harry to take a peaceful family vacation to the town of Silent Hill, a small rural town known for its relaxation and peaceful location for tourists to explore its rich history, tourist attractions, historical landmarks, and more. Upon driving to Silent Hill late at night, Harry and Cheryl would suddenly encounter a teenage girl who appeared in the middle of the highway, which caused Harry to react quickly, swerving off the road to not cause an accident. In doing so, he would drive off the cliff and crash his Jeep Wrangler into the bottom, leaving him unconscious. Upon waking up, Harry finds his Jeep Wrangler crash into a gate with the passenger door wide open, leaving Cheryl missing. Panicking and worried, Harry ventures into the town of Silent Hill to search for his missing daughter. Shortly after exploring, Harry finds Cheryl walking aimlessly through the fog alone. Left confused, as she runs away from Harry, he follows Cheryl deeper into the heavy fog to rescue his daughter before she disappears once again. Harry follows Cheryl into a linear alleyway to find himself in vast darkness as the world around him goes completely dark and shifts to the other world. Luckily for him, he has a lighter to illuminate the darkness that spreads throughout the alleyway. Walking cautiously, he finds a lonely wheelchair and a corpse covered in white, bloodied sheets. Venturing further into this dark alleyway, he finds himself at a dead end with a corpse hanging in bloody barbed wire. Left and awestruck, Harry finds himself cornered by the monsters known as Grey Child, who are equipped with a knife and use it against Harry by stabbing him to death. Moments later, Harry finds himself awakening in Cafe 522, confused and shocked that he's still alive. Emerging from the corner inside of the cafe, a blonde-haired woman in police attire reveals herself as Cybil Bennett, a tough and strong-willed cop who is calm and reserved in stressful situations but courageous and determined to meet her task at hand, risking her life for the greater good and a better tomorrow. In the Silent Hill play novel, it's revealed that when Cybil was a little girl, she witnessed her parents' murder at the hands of an unidentified man who shot both her father and mother in the head, killing them immediately. Unbeknownst to the unidentified assailant, Cybil would be hiding in her closet and looking through the closet's slit witnessing this tragedy. Overcome by grief and sorrow, Cybil would be inspired to avenge her parents' deaths by becoming a police officer, to help others not go through the same fate that she went through. Later on in life, Cybil would be stationed as a police officer in the town of Brams, a small rural area neighboring the town of Silent Hill. On one fateful day, she is sent to investigate Silent Hill after the lack of communication from the precinct and correspondence with the Silent Hill Police Department. Curious, Cybil drives off in her police motorcycle to seek out the mystery of these strange disturbances to discover the truth. On the same night, Cybil is also seen driving off to the town of Silent Hill on her police motorcycle, only to succumb to a similar fate where she crashes on the highway due to the astral projection of Alessa Gillespie catching her off guard, resulting in leaving the motorcycle behind and disappearing. Once formally introducing herself, Harry and Cybil get well acquainted with each other and talk about how they both arrived and question the mystery surrounding the town itself. Harry states he's a tourist visiting the town of his daughter, but unfortunately she disappeared and he is desperately searching to find her. Cybil apologizes as she hasn't seen a little girl with short black hair who just turned 7 last month, as she herself also recently stumbled upon the town mysteriously and is seeking out answers for the strange disappearances of the town's residents. Distraught, Harry decides to leave Cafe 522 to search for Cheryl once again. Before leaving, Cybil urges Harry to provide himself with safety, as she deems the town dangerous given the monsters roaming around. She gives Harry her handgun and informs him to use it only when necessary for self-defense and know who he is shooting. After Cybil leaves, Harry soon follows. However, before leaving the cafe, Harry hears a radio emitting a loud sound. Upon picking up the radio, the air screamer bursts into the window, forcing Harry to kill the monster. Bearing similarities to that of a flying reptile with pale, leathery skin, the air screamer is derived from its high-pitched screaming when spotting its prey and attacking its victim from the air. Due to its agility, the air screamer is usually seen mobile when airborne, rarely seen walking on land, and instead using its mobility to bite or slash at Harry. When it comes to combat, usually a firearm would suffice as it allows distance from having to get close to the monster, allowing for space to avoid damage. If a firearm is out of the question, then retreating is the next best option. Running in a zigzag motion and then dodging at the last second from the attack will help mitigate the chance of being damaged. The air screamer is one of the many manifestations derived from Alessa Gillespie's subconscious, more specifically, her inner fears, dark thoughts, and traumatic experiences. received in her upbringing by various factors throughout her childhood. An illustration from one of Alessa's favorite books titled The Lost World by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle served as inspiration for the creation of the Air Screamer. The novel sees an expedition to a plateau based in the Amazons of South America, where prehistoric animals somehow survived. It's presumed that the pteranodon caught Alessa's attention and was used to distort and manifest dark imagery of that creature. After the encounter of the Air Screamer, Harry steps outside of the cafe to resume his search for Cheryl in the alleyway he was previously in. As Harry backtracks to the alleyway, he encounters another set of monsters guarding the gate before entering the alley called the Groaners. The Groaner is a manifestation that is derived from Alessa's fear and strong dislike of dogs. This monster is a very large, hairless, and decayed-like dog that has brown skin and sharp, bloody teeth. The Groaner is one of the more common enemies in-game that are seen roaming the outside streets of Silent Hill. They are highly sensitive to sound and react immediately to the sounds of gunfire or running that is nearby. If alerted, the Groaner will attack Harry immediately by sprinting towards him to jump and bite viciously. When encountering the Groaner, it's best to use firearms from a safe distance, as when up close, they will circle around Harry and overwhelm him. Melee combat is an option. However, due to the agility of the Groaner, it could be difficult to land a melee hit. If combat isn't an option, then typically running away is the second best choice and dodging to the side as the Groaner will sprint and lunge to bite Harry. Once inside the alleyway, Harry stumbles upon Cheryl's belongings. He finds a torn out notepaper that says to school, referring to Midwich Elementary School. Cheryl's sketchbook shows a crude and innocent drawing depicting Harry that Cheryl drew. With this information, Harry must cut through one of the houses on Levin Street, due to the surrounding roads ominously destroyed. Once inside the house, Harry finds a note that requires the Eclipse keys to open the back door to the backyard. Upon finding these 3 keys in their respective locations, Harry returns to unlock the door with the newly required Eclipse keys to progress to Midwich Elementary School. Once in the backyard, Harry stumbles upon another shift to the other world, where the day abruptly turns into night. Venturing into the darkness of the streets of Silent Hill, Harry finally reaches Midwich Elementary School. Once inside the school, Harry must head to the lab equipment room to acquire the chemical item to use on the hand statue to acquire the gold medallion. Then subsequently, reach the music room to solve a piano puzzle to acquire the silver medallion. With the gold and silver medallion, Harry must insert them into the clock tower located in the courtyard. Before entering the door of the clock tower, he must finally turn on the generator on the basement floor. As Harry cautiously roams the dark-filled hallways and classrooms in the school, he will encounter a previously seen monster known as the Grey Child. These monsters are small in size, with childlike features and pale green skin that wield the knife as its weapon. Although they may appear not as threatening due to their small stature, they are not a force to be reckoned with, as they can easily latch and grab onto Harry, stunning him in the process as he forces himself free, which leaves him vulnerable and susceptible to damage. While vulnerable, Harry can easily be attacked by a nearby Grey Child that will deal damage with its knife as he is held hostage. The Grey Child walks throughout the halls of the first and second floors of the elementary school that are seen typically in large groups, which can be difficult to roam and navigate around them. When dealing with the Grey Child, it's best to either use a firearm while simultaneously walking backwards to avoid being grabbed by the Grey Child, or turning out the flashlight and walking slowly to avoid making loud noises to not alert the monster. The Grey Child is a manifestation of Alessa's classmates, seeing as these monsters appear heavily in Midwich Elementary, with a small, childlike appearance and behavior. Alessa's relationship with her classmates was strained, as they bullied her due to rumors of Alessa's mother, Dahlia Gillespie, a local and known figure who was the leader and priestess of the cults, the Order. The children spread rumors that Alessa was the child born from a mother who practiced witchcraft, associating these ritualistic practices with Alessa, resulting in Alessa being targeted as a victim by her classmates. The Grey Child is a distorted, disturbed, and dark perspective of how Alessa views her classmates due to their constant bullying of her, which is made evident on her desk with scribblings that say, "Go home," or "Drop dead." In combat, when Harry is grabbed and vulnerable to the Grey Child, they audibly laugh with other Grey children close by, slashing him with their knife. This is symbolic of Alessa's bullying, as her classmates would laugh as they physically assaulted her, with the knife representing their violent tendencies. A similar monster variant called the Larval Stalker is also seen roaming the hallways of Midwich Elementary School. However, these monsters are not what they seem, as they do little to no harm towards Harry, as they are unique for their non-aggressive and passive behavior. Rather, they are seen as translucent beings that take the form of a childlike body and behavior as they laugh or trip over themselves. The Larval Stalker is likely another manifestation similar to the Great Child in how they have a demeanor that results in them laughing, without the use of excessive violence at the expense of their victim. The laughing could reflect Alessa's verbal abuse from her fellow classmates who made fun of her by labeling her as a witch. The translucent quality of the Larval Stalker could be a projection of Alessa feeling invisible and unseen by others who witnessed the abuse, yet did nothing to stop it from happening. After passing through the clock tower, Harry finds himself in the other world, Midwich Elementary School. Once here, Harry must find a rubber ball and a picture card. With the picture card, Harry unlocks a door to the north hallway on the first floor. On the second floor, Harry opens a locker in the locker room to find the library reserve key. Afterward, Harry must access the rooftop of the school to place the rubber ball into a storm drain to allow water to flush out the classroom key. Once acquired, Harry uses the classroom key to then access the basement floor. In the basement, Harry solves a turnstile valve puzzle to then enter an elevator to fight the first boss. Harry finds himself in a dark, industrial-like arena with a burning corpse in the middle set on fire. Shortly after, a massive, lizard-like monster called the Splithead walks slowly towards Harry, commencing the first battle. The monster is large in size, with no noticeable facial features, as much of the face is obscured, seen only with a large, gaping split mouth. While it's slow in movement, it makes up for it in sheer size as it can easily overpower Harry by headbutting at him, dealing lots of damage. In its second phase, it becomes much more aggressive, opening its large split mouth to bite and consume Harry. If successful, it will immediately kill Harry in one bite if Harry is unable to escape. Dealing damage to the Splithead is best with a firearm, likely the shotgun, it found previously in Otherworld Midwich Elementary School. The shotgun can deal lots of damage if you fire directly into the large, split mouth of the monster. The Splithead is implied from a previous memo Harry found in a fairy tale book called The Lizard's Story. The story tells a tale of a hunter armed with a bow and arrow, determined to find the lizard and kill the reptile. Alessa presumably read this fairy tale book from the school library, imagining the lizard as a monster. Further connecting this to Alessa is the corpse seen in fire in the industrial-like arena where the Splithead is fought, which serves as visual imagery of the burning she received from her mother after a ritual she was forced into went horribly wrong, resulting in her skin being charred and burned. After defeating the Splithead, Harry exits Midwich Elementary School, returning to the fog world in Old Silent Hill. Harry navigates through the streets to eventually reach the front doorstep of Balkan Church. Inside the church, Harry is formally introduced to Dahlia Gillespie. While appearing mysterious and cryptic in her speech, Dahlia has seemingly good intentions in ending the supernatural and psychological events happening in Silent Hill. However, these intentions are merely a cover-up to coerce Harry into falsely completing a ritual to restrain Alessa from her using her psychokinesis powers. In reality, Dahlia is the leader and priestess of the cult's The Order, an underground organization that prays and practices under the belief of devoting their time to the creation of God, cleansing the earth to receive paradise. Sometime around the 1900s, the Order was formed when Silent Hill became a tourist town, grooming the town's residents into their cult practices and beliefs. However, the negative backlash received from the town's residents that refused to join the cult resulted in the Order being forced to operate in secret and orchestrate many of the events to transpire throughout the series. Because of the natives' practices that indoctrinated ritualistic performances such as resurrection, exorcisms, and healing of mortal wounds and diseases, this served as a basis for the cult's practices. Dahlia Gillespie would use her family's background, such as the mining coal company, to excavate native remains and artifacts to use in these rituals. This is supported by her comment to Harry, expecting his appearance, as she puts it, foretold by gyromancy, a method where someone spins or walks around the circumference of a circle drawn on the ground, with letters from the alphabet inscribed around the circumference. The ritual performance is based on the letters where the person stumbles, falls, or lands on. It's intended to create a random or altered state of consciousness to aid in predicting the future. Throughout the years under Dahlia's reign and position under the cult, she would manipulate and influence many of the town's residents into becoming followers of worshipping their god and subjecting her teachings to others in hopes of one day creating a new paradise. This manipulation would sometimes result in drastic measures, where Dahlia would force innocent people who disagreed with her cult's practices, kidnapping or grooming young girls to use them in a sacrificial ritual where they would serve as a surrogate mother, distributing an illegal drug called PTV for its hallucinogenic properties, or running the Wish House Orphanage to teach young kids about their order's practices, often resulting in child abuse if the children disobeyed or retaliated. Because Dahlia knows that Harry is desperate to find his daughter Cheryl, she uses this to manipulate and coerce Harry into falsely believing that he is using the Flaros to bring a cage of peace and counteract the wrath of the other world. While vague, Harry is under the impression that this device will likely serve a purpose in stopping the events of the Otherworld and the monsters that run amok in Silent Hill. With this in mind, Dahlia urges Harry to take the Flaros and head over to Alchemilla Hospital. Left with more questions than answers, Dahlia leaves, resulting in Harry departing shortly after. Harry must then lower a drawbridge from the bridge control room to gain access to the town district called Central Silent Hill. Before reaching Alchemilla Hospital, Harry runs into the next monster, called the Romper. This monster is ape-like in its behavior, and also in its attacks towards Harry. It's easily sensitive to loud noises such as running or gunfire, resulting in the Romper skipping in a running-like motion to jump and topple Harry. Using either the handgun or shotgun would prove to be effective in dealing damage from a safe distance while backpedaling, as trying to melee the Romper could be difficult, since it's very agile in its movement. If all else fails, running and avoiding the enemy altogether is a safe option. However, the Romper could still run towards Harry and even pounce on him from behind to deal damage. The Romper is a manifestation that is derived from Alessa's fear of adults, likely due to her mother Dahlia and other cult members overpowering her and forcing her into their cult's practices and teachings that she grew to despise and hate over the years, creating not only resentment but also fear and negative thoughts towards adults due to their power and authority over her. While exploring the streets of Central Silent Hill, Harry finally finds Alchemilla Hospital. Once inside, Harry opens the door to the examination room to find Michael Kaufmann, the director of Alchemilla Hospital. Upon this exchange, Harry is greeted with Kaufmann aiming his revolver at Harry and proceeds to fire, barely missing him. Harry quickly addresses that he is not one of the monsters and is human. Hoping to find answers, Harry questions Kaufmann if he knows anything about the town of Silent Hill's supernatural and psychological events. Kaufmann recounts that he woke up recently from a nap in the hospital to find no one around and had mysteriously disappeared. Harry asks Kaufmann if he has seen a little girl who looks like his daughter. However, Kaufmann states he hasn't seen a little girl and highly doubts she could still be alive. While another victim of the supernatural phenomenon that arose in Silent Hill, Kaufmann isn't what he appears to be, as much of his role is integral to the events to follow. While he is the director of Alchemilla Hospital, who worked amongst the medical staff, in reality, Kaufmann worked closely as a business partner and associate to Dahlia Gillespie and the Order. While working secretly under the Order, Kaufmann used his position as the director of Alchemilla Hospital to coerce illegal drug trafficking amongst residents in Silent Hill by distributing a drug called PTV, a hallucinogenic drug that took properties from the plant White Claudia. With this underground operation at hand, Kaufmann was tasked by Dahlia to legally elicit and distribute PTV onto the black market to sell to tourists. In doing so, Kaufmann would have a business partner named Norman Young. Their intentions were profiting and, in exchange, they carried out illegal medical dealings such as forging autopsies and patients' medical records to divert pharmaceutical attention to the drug they were selling. However, this illegal drug trafficking would get the attention of the local authorities from the Silent Hill Police Department and their local mayor, launching an investigation into their illegal operations. However, this investigation wouldn't last long, as the Order would murder the mayor and one of the police officers to prevent further investigation into Kaufmann and the Order's drug trafficking. Years later, the Order would be secretly nourishing the embryonic god and foreseeing the imminent birth of the god, which resulted in Dahlia betraying Kaufmann as she didn't need further use of him anymore, resulting in Kaufmann seeking revenge for her betrayal. While exploring Alchemilla Hospital, Harry finds a red liquid in the director's office. This red liquid is known as Algoaphotis. According to the Kabbalah, the name is taken from a herb grown in the Arabian desert, granting the power to dispel demonic forces and grant supernatural immunity to those possessing the item. Algoaphotis is deeply rooted to the Paeonia, a European flowering plant found in the mountains of southern Europe. Paeonia was a herb used for medicinal purposes. The Greek doctor, Dioscorides, named Algoaphotis as a member of the Paeoni family and speculated that Algoaphotis serves as the main source. After turning on the generator in the basement, Harry enters the elevator to the second floor, only to be met with the otherworld Alchemilla Hospital. While roaming through the industrial, rusted, decayed hallways, Harry encounters two monsters called the Puppet Nurse and Puppet Doctor. These monsters take the form of a human appearance that is possessed by a parasite on their back, which manipulates their movements by assuming control over their body. Both the Puppet Nurse and Puppet Doctor function relatively the same when it comes to their behavior. They both make loud, audible grunts or moans when roaming idly or when alerted by Harry's presence. The weapon of choice is a knife seen equipped in their hand, in which they will attack Harry by slashing at him or by having another puppet nurse or puppet doctor grapple him while the other attacks him simultaneously. The only minor difference in their gameplay is their strength and movement. Puppet doctors are typically slower in their movement, yet stronger with their damage, while puppet nurses are faster in their movement, yet weaker in their attacks, dealing less damage. The puppet nurse and puppet doctor are symbolic of the corruption Algoaphotis Hospital was subjected to, under Michael Kaufmann's position of distributing the illegal drug, PTV, or forging medical records or autopsies. This could also be a projection of Alessa's hatred and distaste for doctors, as she was held captive in the basement of Algoaphotis Hospital for 7 years against her will. Eventually, Harry must find 4 plates to solve the plate puzzle. This will be the plate of Turtle, the plate of Cat, the plate of Queen, and the plate of Hatter. When reaching room 204, Harry encounters the Bloodsucker, a monster that comprises 3 leeches with octopus-like tentacles hungry for sucking on blood. The Bloodsucker guards the plate of Hatter. To accomplish this, Harry must find a blood pack to distract the Bloodsucker from killing him, as if Harry gets too close, the Bloodsucker will capture him and kill him. The Bloodsucker is the only monster in game, with the exception of the Larval Stalker, that Harry cannot kill with physical force such as melee or firearms. The Bloodsucker is said to be derived from less a strong aversion to leeches or snakes, similar to her dislike of specific insects. Once all 4 plates have been acquired, Harry inserts them and solves the plate puzzle to progress forward into the otherworld Algoaphotis Hospital. By using disinfectant alcohol and a lighter, Harry combines these items to burn the vines blocking the hatch. Once Harry enters, he finds a room with a hospital bed and a photo of Alessa Gillespie. With the examination key, Harry enters the medicine room where he meets Lisa Garland. Lisa Garland's backstory is rather tragic, as she lived and grew up in the town of Silent Hill. In her youth, she attended Midwich Elementary School, and in her late teenage years, aspired to be an actress as she developed a fond love for theaters, especially plays and movies. However, these ambitions were met with no avail as her family disapproved of her goals and instead pressured her into becoming a nurse. Much like her mother and grandmother before her, this led to her eventual occupation of becoming a trainee nurse who worked under Michael Kaufmann. Because of Kaufmann's illicit distribution of illegal drugs under the order, he would pressure Lisa into taking the illegal narcotic PTV. Because of the long-term abuse, Lisa unfortunately gained an addiction to the drug. Kaufmann used this to blackmail her into keeping Alessa alive with continuous medical attention. In performing this task, Kaufmann would supply Lisa's addiction and wouldn't reveal her illegal drug use to the public. Over the span of 7 years of watching Alessa under her care, Lisa would become more mentally and physically unwell as the toll of drug abuse, blackmail, and caring for Alessa made her deteriorate over time. The side effects of the drug she took over the years resulted in hallucinations and becoming more unstable, as she would see illusions of insects invading her personal space or the water faucet pouring out bodily fluids. Around this time, Lisa Garland's boyfriend, Matthew, visited Silent Hill in an attempt to save her, as he became worried about Lisa's mental and physical health deteriorating. However, this would prove to be difficult as Dahlia would successfully have Alessa's other half of her soul, Cheryl Mason, fuse back with her original self and become whole again. Once the town shifted into the nightmarish state it was in, Matthew's attempts to save Lisa proved to be futile, as he would be killed by Valtiel, an angel who was a servant of the Order's god and protector of the fetus, ensuring it would be born. With rage consuming her after witnessing the death of her boyfriend, Lisa's attempts to strangle and kill Valtiel was no avail, as Valtiel would murder her as a result, leaving Lisa to become a lost spirit roaming aimlessly in the other world. Upon meeting a frightened Lisa Garland, Harry introduces himself and Lisa pleads to Harry in hopes of finding answers to what is happening to the town of Silent Hill. Much to her dismay, Harry unfortunately doesn't have a clue or idea as to what is happening. Lisa responds to not having her memories intact and doesn't remember how she ended up in the other world, as she was unconscious. Before furthering their conversation, Harry gets an excruciating headache from the siren blaring loudly, resulting in him falling unconscious. Harry then wakes up in the fog world, greeted by Dahlia Gillespie once again. Dahlia talks cryptically about the town being engulfed in darkness, and in order to stop the nightmare, Harry must not allow the Mark of Samael to be completed. However, unbeknownst to Harry, Dahlia is once again manipulating him into furthering the ritual and being completed to dispel Alessa of her psychic powers, to make her susceptible to becoming vulnerable and weak. After Dahlia leaves, Harry continues his search in the Green Line antique shop. Once inside, Harry notices a suspicious indentation on the wall behind a cabinet. Curious, Harry pushes the cabinet to reveal a hidden passageway into a tunnel. Soon after, Harry is surprised by Cybil, revealed to still be alive. Harry asks Cybil why she's still in Silent Hill alone. As he recalls her bringing backup, Cybil states that she couldn't escape as the roads are blocked, cars stopped running, and the phone lines have been all cut off. However, Cybil mentions that she saw Harry's daughter run off to the resort area but couldn't stop her. Harry mentions to Cybil if he knows about a woman named Dahlia Gillespie, but Cybil doesn't seem to know of her. He then mentions the other world, effects that cause the town to be consumed by nightmares, monsters, sirens, and hallucinations. Cybil doesn't indulge Harry's worries as she shrugs them off as Harry being tired. Nevertheless, Harry walks through the tunnel to stumble upon an altar. Upon inspecting the altar, Harry finds white substance known as White Claudia left in the chalice. He concludes that this is the other church Dahlia mentioned previously. Before leaving back into the tunnel, Harry is then transported to the other world Alchemilla Hospital with Lisa Garland. Lisa greets Harry by telling him he's having a bad dream. Harry asks Lisa if she knows anything regarding Dahlia Gillespie, to which she recounts her as crazy, but that her daughter died in a fire years ago. Harry then asks if Lisa knows anything about the town being engulfed in darkness. Lisa recalls that before the town became a tourist attraction for tourists. However, some of the residents followed the religion, the order, that practiced occult teachings and performed ritualistic black magic. In practice, this would see the order harboring a surrogate mother to give birth to a god that the followers believed would cleanse the earth of sin and give birth to a new paradise. After this exchange, Harry soon passes out once again, awakening from his sleep to find himself in the other world, Central Silent Hill. With the roads blocked off from furthering his progression to the resort area, Harry has to take a scenic route through the Silent Hill town center. Once inside, Harry finds multiple monitor screens depicting Cheryl Mason pleading to her father to where he is and to save her. While exploring the mall, Harry accidentally walks on a weak platform that collapses, seeing him fall into an arena with the second boss, the Twinfeeler. The monster is a giant moth larva that is derived from Alessa's fascination with collecting insects. The Twinfeeler uses the ground to travel underneath Harry to use as an advantage to surprise him whenever it protrudes from the ground to deal damage by spitting acid. Because the Twinfeeler is always moving, it's difficult to use melee combat as much of Harry's attacks will miss due to the hitbox. It's best to use the hunting rifle, which is found close by in the same arena, and use the spare rifle ammo to deal heavy damage against the Twinfeeler. Moving around the arena and not staying in one place will be beneficial for survival and avoid being snuck up on and getting attacked. After a harsh, grueling battle, Harry defeats the Twinfeeler. However, this defeat is short-lived as the Twinfeeler retreats. With an exit provided to leave the Silent Hill town center, Harry travels to the otherworld Central Silent Hill to navigate the linear, nightmarish hellscape to a safer location. In his efforts, Harry encounters a variant of the Air Screamer called the Night Flutter. Much like the Air Screamer, the creature resembles a pteranodon-like monster, with differences that are seen in its appearance when it comes to its head being replaced with a solid mass of worms, and its body appearing more humanoid. Because it is a variant of the Air Screamer, this monster differs in its airspeed and strength, as it is much more ruthless and vicious in nature. The Night Flutter appears more hostile and aggressive towards Harry when pursuing him in flight. If alerted by his presence, the Night Flutter will fly towards his location, diving towards him to slash him. Melee combat is a futile option as it is always in the air and never comes down to ground level. Weapons such as the shotgun, or if necessary for stronger firepower, the hunting rifle, will work just as fine to kill the monster. The Night Flutter is symbolic of Alessa's disgust for worms. This is emphasized in Night Flutter's appearance as it has a mass of worms conjoined into forming a head on the creature that comes off as vile and putrid, aligning with Alessa's perception of insects. The Night Flutter could also be symbolic of Harry's sanity deteriorating, as worms are known to naturally decompose, a metaphor for his thoughts, fears, and worries literally and figuratively devouring him and eating his sanity away. Close by in Central Silent Hill, Harry encounters a variant of the Groaner called Wormhead. Similar to its counterpart, the Wormhead has dog-like features in its appearance, with much more weight compared to the skinny, withered appearance of the Groaner. The head shape amasses worms conjoined to manipulate that of a worm-like head. Because of the influence of the otherworld, the monster becomes much more agile in its momentum and stronger in its strength, functioning similarly to the Groaner. The Wormhead will be susceptible to any loud audible sounds, such as Harry running close by or gunshots being fired, resulting in the Wormhead running towards Harry's location to attack him. Because they're sensitive to sound, it's best to avoid the Wormhead altogether by retreating. However, if necessary, they can be easily disposed of with a shotgun or hunting rifle as long as you're in a safe location. Because of their appearance, manifesting that of a dog in conjunction with worms, it's symbolic of Alessa's hatred and dislike towards dogs and worms. With their combined features, it could be speculated that it's the otherworld's corruption of Alessa's fears manifesting into a much more powerful force. a metaphor for one's loss of sanity and disillusionment to the horrors overpowering the human psyche. Eventually, Harry finds himself entering Alchemilla Hospital once again for safe sanctuary, where he once again finds Lisa Garland hiding in the medicine room. Once they both reconcile knowing they're both alive, Harry asks Lisa for an alternative path to the lake, as the roads to the resort area are blocked off. Lisa remembers that there is a sewer system underground that connects from Old Silent Hill to the resort area. This is met with a worried Lisa, as she's filled with fear and anxiety, not wanting to be left alone. Lisa wants to leave, yet feels compelled to stay at Alchemilla Hospital for some unknown reason. Harry reassures Lisa that he'll come back for her as soon as he is done. As Harry leaves Alchemilla Hospital, he first has to engage in a battle with the third boss, called the Floatstinger, an evolution of the moth larva previously seen as the Twinfeeler, now in a mature form that is exaggerated in its size. Much of the Floatstinger gameplay functions with aerial attacks, staying afloat in the air as an advantage over Harry on the surface level. The monster spits acid projectiles from its mouth and uses its stinger to sting Harry. Gunplay is recommended in this boss fight as melee combat is not as effective, especially with short-range melee weapons such as the knife. As always, gun combat is best for the situation as it will give Harry distance while backpedaling when firing a shotgun or a hunting rifle. However, momentum is key here as the arena is very claustrophobic and doesn't have lots of ankle room to breathe. The Floatstinger is manifested from Alessa's interest in moths. Moths in symbolism often represent transformation, frequently associated with a cycle of life and death. An interpretation of the moth can be derived from Alessa's loss of innocence, a child born into the darkness of the physical and verbal abuse she suffered, yet subjected to being hailed and worshipped as the Mother of God, prophesied to create a world of lights. One could say the transformation of the moth appears harmless and innocent, but as the nightmares and trauma from Alessa's abuse and torture manifested, this innocence becomes corrupted and projects physical forms of these nightmares into reality. After defeating the Floatstinger, Harry is transported back to the fog world in central Silent Hill. Harry then backtracks to Old Silent Hill towards the sewers location on Midwich Street to brute force his way into a locked gate and go down a ladder into the sewers. Once Harry arrives in the sewers, Harry encounters the Creepers. The Creepers don't pose much of a threat as they're easily avoidable and don't deal significant damage. Because they are small in size, it may prove to be difficult to attack them with a melee weapon, but easier to fire at with a firearm. Alternatively, Harry can choose to have his light off and avoid them altogether, as it can prove to be tedious rather than difficult due to the reaction to light, which causes them to run away, ensuing a chase to kill them. The Creepers are manifested from Alessa's disgust over cockroaches. While navigating through the liminal underground labyrinth of the sewers, Harry finds the sewer exit key. Shortly after, he encounters the monster called Hang Scratcher. This monster bears a resemblance to that of a green reptile, possibly a frog. These monsters have elongated, thin limbs and sharp claws that allow them to traverse around the walls or hang from the ceiling as an advantage when preying on their victim. Furthermore, they appear in either a group of 2 or 3 to surround their prey and make it difficult to escape, overwhelming their victim. Due to their radio not working underground, this can make it difficult to be alerted to the presence of the Hang Scratcher, surprising their victim in panic. The monster is also very persistent in the pursuit of its prey, as it will consistently follow Harry when alerted of its presence and will attack until he is dead. It's best to deal with the Hang Scratcher with a strong firearm such as the shotgun or rifle. The hammer makes a great melee weapon if needed to cover crowd control. The Hang Scratcher is manifested from Alessa's dislike for insects, albeit with the exception for moths. She shows disdain and disgust for other insects that appear vile or putrid in its appearance. The Hang Scratcher, appearing in its human-like body, could possibly reinforce her fear of humans. After escaping the sewers, Harry finds himself in the resort area. Upon exploring, Harry's met with the Mumbler, a variant of the Great Child. Interestingly, the Mumbler serves to replace the Great Child in the PAL and Japan versions of Silent Hill 1. As the Great Child underwent many revisions as it was rejected by the PEGI and SETO censorships due to the Great Child resembling that of a child, and the fact that he had to kill them in an act of self-defense. As a compromise, Team Silent made the Mumbler for the PAL and Japan versions. The Mumbler appears with reddish-brown skin, short in size, and has long, razor-sharp claws. Its primary attack is using its claws to slash at Harry and to grab onto him so he becomes vulnerable to other surrounding Mumblers' attacks. Because they function similarly to the Great Child, using a firearm while simultaneously backpedaling or turning off the flashlight to avoid them proves to be the viable option. The Mumbler is likely a manifestation derived from the dark fairy tales that Alessa read in her time at Midwich Elementary School. When visiting Annie's bar, he finds Kaufmann attacked by the Mumbler. With quick thinking, Harry uses his handgun to fire at the Mumbler, killing the monster and saving Kaufmann. With the situation handled, Harry and Kaufmann catch up a bit before Kaufmann states he has other important business matters to attend to, leaving Harry to himself. Before leaving, Harry notices Kaufmann dropped a key and a receipt with the number 0473 labeled in red. With this in mind, Harry heads over to Indian Runner, where he inputs the numbers 0473 into the keypad, granting him access. Once inside, Harry then uses the safe key on the locker safe, finding drugs, specifically PTV. This alludes to the legal drug trafficking that Kaufmann and his business associate Norman Young participated in. Upon further inspection, there are notes left by Norman himself that give a bit of insight into his thoughts and feelings, which shows him having a moral conscience and reflecting on the illicit distribution of these PTV drugs on the black market, to the extent where he even thought about leaving town, as he doesn't want to participate in this illegal operation but is scared of what will happen to him. After Harry finds a code on the wall labeled 0886, he proceeds to Norman's motel to find a series of items, which eventually leads him to a garage where he finds a vial inside a motorcycle gas tank. As if on cue, Kaufmann arrives with anger when he sees Harry holding the vial, which contains Algoaphotis. This exchange results in Kaufmann projecting his anger with hostility, threatening Harry if he wants to die here and telling him to keep out of other people's business. After completing the side quest, Harry proceeds across the bridge to Lakeside Amusement Park. However, once Harry crosses over the bridge, there's another loud siren indicating a shift to the other world. Once gaining composure, Harry makes his way to the Lakeside Pier, entering a boat where he abruptly meets Cybil once again. Cybil demands an answer for the psychological events taking place in the town, which results in Harry theorizing that Alessa's delusions and fears manifest into a nightmarish reality. Cybil, still in disbelief and not completely believing Harry, is interrupted by Dahlia's unexpected appearance. Dahlia once again talks cryptically, foretelling the events to come of a demon who corrupted and possessed Alessa, manipulating her into casting darkness and corruption onto reality. Dahlia pleads with Harry to stop Alessa's plan by using the Flaros, preventing her from using the Mark of Samael to cast Annihilation. With this information, Harry quickly runs to the lighthouse, finding the Mark of Samael inscribed onto the platform and Alessa waiting for Harry. However, before Harry uses the Flaros, Alessa's astral projection disappears. Harry then recuperates at the boat, predicting that Alessa should be heading to Lakeside Amusement Park. Without a moment to lose, Harry proceeds to yet another manhole, leading down into the sewers underneath the resort area. Once inside the sewers, Harry once again has to navigate the linear labyrinth of tunnels to exit the other side of the sewer system. Harry finds himself in Otherworld Lakeside Amusement Park, where much of the amusement park itself is decayed in a metal industrial-like quality, with surrounding attractions rotten and abandoned. Shortly after, Harry stumbles upon a carousel with an infected Cybil Bennett that has been possessed by a parasite. With Cybil corrupted, she uses her handgun to fire at Harry in an effort to kill him. Forced to defend himself, Harry's presumably left with no other option other than to kill Cybil. However, if Harry collected the red liquid previously seen at Alchemilla Hospital, he can use this as his insurance policy, as the red liquid itself is Algoaphotis. With the red liquid in hand, Harry throws the Algoaphotis at Cybil, dispelling the parasite and ultimately crushing it with his foot. When checking on Cybil, Cybil asks Harry why the cult wants his daughter. Harry himself doesn't know why exactly, but reveals that Cheryl isn't his biological daughter. Rather, Harry and his late wife 7 years ago found a baby alone on the side of the road. Not knowing who this baby could belong to and presumed abandoned, Harry and Jody adopt Cheryl as their daughter. Regardless, Harry's devoted to saving his daughter, biological or not, hoping to end this nightmare once and for all. Afterward, Harry confronts Alessa. Trying to be reasonable, Harry urges Alessa to release Cheryl and to let them go. Alessa ignores his comment and retaliates by using her psychokinesis powers to push Harry away, hurting him in the process. Unbeknownst to Harry, the Flaros awakens, directly affecting Alessa as its power weakens her. With Alessa now incapacitated, Dahlia abruptly appears, revealing that she is the mother of Alessa. Dahlia arrogantly thanks Harry into helping her with her plan, tricking him into stopping Alessa's attempt from delaying and aborting God's birth. Clueless, Harry demands answers but to no response. Dahlia tells Alessa that she has one more task that she needs to do for her before the ritual is finalized. For context, before Alessa is captured by her mother, Dahlia falsely claimed to Harry that the Mark of Samael was a ritual that Alessa was orchestrating to cause annihilation on the town and the town's inhabitants as a means of not only putting an end to the cult, but also committing ritualistic suicide. While partially true, Dahlia misleads Harry with the fabrication of Mark of Samael, rather than stating the truth to be still the Metatron. The reason for this is due to not revealing the true intentions from Alessa. Alessa wants to finally put an end to her pain and suffering she experienced with 7 long years of trauma. Her upbringing saw her subjected to forced religious practices by her mother, bullied by her classmates verbally and physically, and served as a sacrificial offering for a ritual conducted by her mother, resulting in her body becoming burned, immobilizing her to being confined to a hospital bed for 7 years. The Mark of Samael, in reality, is nothing but mere fodder and serves no significance to the order, seen merely as a talisman. The aforementioned seal of Metatron is derived from the Jewish mythology, such as the angel himself, Metatron, standing close to God as a mediator of humanity. As God's scribe, Metatron records all human and divine choices, granting him immense knowledge and wisdom. This knowledge makes him a powerful figure, able to use it for manipulation and control. Samael, depicted as an angel of death, is one of the 7 archangels who serves as the king of all demons, loosely equating to that of Satan in some cultures, such as Jewish mysticism. Interestingly, in the Lost Memories Silent Hill Chronicle, according to Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism, the angels Metatron and Samael originally share the same existence, implying that they both serve under the function of the seal of Metatron. While the seal of Metatron is seen as nothing more than a talisman from the order, it contradicts those claims as Alessa's plan was derived from inscribing 5 seal of Metatron symbols throughout Old Silent Hill, Central Silent Hill, and the resort area. These symbols are inscribed at Midwich Elementary School, Alchemilla Hospital, Green Lion Antique Shop, Lakeside Lighthouse, and finally, Lakeside Amusement Park. Had Alessa become successful in this ritual, she likely would have caused complete annihilation to the town in an attempt to end the cult itself as collateral damage, with her true intentions wanting to end her life to purge the embryo god maturing inside of her, as beforehand she couldn't keep herself due to the ritual Dahlia performed years ago that casted a spell on her that made her susceptible to the forces and power of God, protecting her from harm. Learning of this revelation, Harry is transported to Nowhere, an amalgamation of Alessa's nightmares manifested into a physical construct of her memories. These memories of her pain, suffering, and trauma amalgamate into her psyche, collapsing into itself after she's weakened by the Flaros. While here, Harry once again meets Lisa Garland, who tells Harry that she feels like she's been here before, but is still uncertain, now pleading to Harry to help her as she is scared, while mentally breaking down and running off. Harry must navigate this maze-like structure of Nowhere, as many of the rooms are nonsensical in its progression, lacking any sense in its direction. Harry finds the key of Uphill, allowing him access to a door which sees him solving the astrology puzzle and acquiring the Stone of Time. After, he then solves the Grim Reaper's list with the correct key code, allowing him to acquire the Amulet of Solomon. After acquiring the Amulet of Solomon, Harry encounters Lisa Garland, ominously waiting in the corner. Lisa comes to the revelation that she was never actually alive. Rather, she's a spirit trapped in the other world, stuck amongst the manifestations derived from Alessa's nightmares. Lisa begs Harry to save her as she walks towards him in desperation as blood pours down from her head, crying out to him. Frightened, Harry panics and locks Lisa inside the room, leaving her to herself forever. With the Stone of Time, Harry inserts it into the grandfather clock to access the key of Haggith. Unlocking the double doors to ride the elevator, Harry uses the elevator to access the 3rd floor to solve the light puzzle, which he does successfully, and accesses the birdcage key. Harry then acquires the Crest of Mercury and the Ring of Contracts. With the birdcage key, Harry unlocks the cage to get the key of Peleg. With the key of Peleg, Harry unlocks the kitchen to then use the Ring of Contract on a chain to lock the Bloodsucker from killing him. In doing so, Harry acquires the dagger of Malchier. With more progression, Harry finds a bag of jelly beans to tear open, finding the key of Bethor. In a neighboring room down the hall, Harry finds the Unk. Harry must then head to the basement to turn off the generator to safely unscrew a tablet hiding the key of Aratron. With the key of Aratron, Harry acquires the final item needed, called the Disc of Ouroboros. With all the pieces needed, Harry heads back to Alessa's room to insert them into the door to head to the final area to confront Dahlia Gillespie. Before doing so, Harry encounters one of Alessa's memories, where she is seen in a hospital bed after she was burned alive by the ritual her mother conducted. We learn that Dahlia, Kaufmann, and 2 unidentified doctors talk amongst each other about proceeding with the plan to see the birth of God. However, due to Alessa's soul being split in half as a result of the failed ritual, the birth of God is left dormant, as the other half of her soul must be combined as one to finish the ritual. Dahlia reassures the others that in due time, the other half of Alessa's soul will come to find her, as Alessa's weakened state can only prolong her pain for so long before she will seek out help by calling out to her other half, that being Cheryl Mason. Before Harry descends down the stairs to confront Dahlia, he sees yet another memory of Alessa's childhood, where we see a desperate Dahlia urging Alessa to lend her power, with Alessa retaliating, only wanting to be with her mother, with Dahlia ignoring Alessa's comment before we see the astral projection of the memory fade away. With much of the story focusing on Alessa, as she is arguably the overall protagonist, seeing as much of the events that transpire are centered around her, It's best to delve into her character when it comes to understanding her backstory and how her upbringing influenced much of the Order's plans to bring about this god to the eventual collapse and corruption of Silent Hill. With no mention of a father, it's implied that Alessa wasn't born through biological means, but rather created through the magical conjuration from a ritual performed by one of the sectors in the cults. This intention was to have Alessa's creation serve the sole purpose of being one of many young girls serving as a surrogate mother who could potentially be a contender in nurturing an embryo of a god in their womb. Because of Alessa's relationship with her mother, who is rumored to be a crazy old religious woman by others in the community, and because of Alessa's supernatural powers, she would become a victim of bullying from other classmates at Minwich Elementary School. The classmates would go as far as scribbling into her desk with such hurtful comments, calling her a witch, go home, or drop dead. To make matters worse, it's implied that Dahlia physically abused Alessa and locked her in the attic whenever she disobeyed her mother when it came to their cult's practices, or partaking in their sermon at church to pray and worship their god. Alessa's teacher, Kay Gordon, took notice of her bullying from the other classmates and speculated that Dahlia would physically beat her. Worried about Alessa, Kay Gordon lodged a complaint regarding Dahlia's treatment towards Alessa. An investigation into the matter by both an unnamed officer and Dr. Michael Kaufmann, the director of Alchemilla Hospital, resulted in the dismissal of the complaints, with the outcome specifying that no evidence of any mistreatment of the child was found by either the officer or the doctor. When Alessa turned 7 years old, Dahlia's impatience grew and ultimately led her to conduct a ritual on Alessa as she desired to birth the cult's god. In her lust for power, Dahlia was confident enough to use her house as a ground to conduct a ritual to summon the deity, with Alessa serving as the surrogate mother, resulting in her impulsively and ignorantly carrying out the ritual. In doing so, Dahlia commenced the ritual. However, the ritual would go horribly wrong, setting Alessa's body on fire and brutally scarring and burning her skin. This eventually led to the Gillespie house burning down, leaving the general public to believe that Alessa was killed in the fire. In actuality, this would merely be a cover-up, as her body would be administrated to the basement floor of Alchemilla Hospital. For the next 7 long years, Alessa would still be kept alive against her will, suffering the immense, excruciating pain of the negative side effects of the ritual that burned her body, seeing her bedridden and taken care of by Lisa Garland. As a last-ditch effort, Alessa split her soul in two and created her other half, Cheryl Mason. Cheryl was Alessa's attempt to provide a happy life that didn't result in pain and suffering for her other half, so that she could live out the life she never had. However, in this pursuit of happiness, Alessa would have to sacrifice herself by having to undergo pain and agony inflicted upon by her mother, as a means to subconsciously call out to Cheryl to go looking for Alessa to return and become whole once again. Once Alessa and Cheryl become whole, this would result in the completion of the ritual. While Dahlia would be successful, as Harry and Cheryl would drive to Silent Hill, unintentionally returning Cheryl to her other half, this didn't deter Alessa from having a contingency plan of her own, which ultimately would see Cheryl return to her and kill herself to finally end her pain and suffering, thwarting her mother's plans and aborting the birth of God. With Alessa and Cheryl now together again, Alessa casts an astral projection of herself, which allows her to unlock psychic abilities such as psychokinesis. Eventually, Alessa's nightmares, fears, and trauma manifest into the town of Silent Hill, becoming consumed by the fog world and the other world, a physical construct produced by the human psyche, stuck between space and time, bordering reality and unreality. Harry finally confronts Dahlia, only to be met with Cybil putting her handgun at her, threatening to open fire if she doesn't comply. Cybil fires her gun, but to no avail, as Dahlia and Alessa are protected due to Alessa's fetus casting protection over the surrogate mother, resulting in Cybil being thrown back by Alessa's psychokinesis. Losing patience, Harry demands an answer as to what is going on and where Cheryl is. Dahlia tells Harry that Cheryl returned to Alessa, making her soul complete as she returned to her former self. Dahlia reveals to Harry that 7 years ago, Alessa was kept alive, suffering from her wounds, in turn, nurturing the fetus from her pain. This was an attempt to expedite the process. Her suffering subconsciously called to Cheryl to return to Alessa, no longer delaying the ritual and instead finishing what she started many years ago. With Alessa's withered body in the wheelchair and her astral projection nearby, this fuses both the god and herself to form the incubator, an idealized interpretation derived from Alessa's mental image of a beautiful, angelic woman resembling that of God, symbolizing Alessa's innocence and purity, dressed in white robes with glowing, bright lights, and appearing as a holy, benevolent deity in nature. Soon after, Dahlia is immediately shot by Kaufmann, enraged that Dahlia used and betrayed him. In retaliation, Kaufmann reveals a vial of Algoaphotis, with the intention of dispelling the demonic entity residing inside the incubator. As Kaufmann throws the Algoaphotis towards the incubator, this exorcises the god, revealing the Incubus, a demonic-like entity that possesses the power of flight and lightning. In demonstrating this power, it ultimately kills Dahlia with its lightning strike. Realizing the god has been revealed in its true form, Harry commences in a final battle with the Incubus. Because the god is imperfect, its appearance shows a demon-like creature that is based on the demon Baphomet, an ambiguously gendered entity that possesses qualities of both male and female features, symbolizing the equilibrium of opposites. The image is derived from the French occult writer Eliphas Lévy. According to Lévy, his intention was to symbolize Baphomet with the concept of balance, representing the goal of perfect social order. Because of its occult and satanic-like imagery, Baphomet is shunned and frowned upon by Catholic and Christian cultures. The god has a head of a goat, missing eyes, with two sharp, demon-like horns protruding out of its head, the feet with hooves, its body resembling that of a malnourished human, with its spine visible and its abdomen rotted away, feathered wings, and its breasts symbolizing the binary features. According to Masahiro Ito, the unintelligible symbols inscribed on both wings are derived from Greek, meaning something. The rest of the words on the body of the Incubus have not all been identified, resulting in the words remaining unexplained. The Incubus is a collective manifestation derived from the cult itself, worshipping the idolized god in conjunction with the mental image of Alessa's idea of God. The Silent Hill Chronicle, Book of Lost Memories, states that the form of God, born to the earth, changes depending on those who summon it. For example, the town of Silent Hill holds the power to materialize delusions and innermost thoughts from one's subconscious. God is the result of someone's delusions, just like the other creatures. Alessa worshipped and prayed for a god to be seen as holy and pure, which is derived from the incubator. However, once Algoaphotis is used on the incubator, it exorcises the god to be seen in its true form, as an incomplete demonic entity manifested from the Order's psyche. The Incubus is airborne in its boss fight, remaining stationary as it never once moves from its position during flight. Its primary attack is red lightning strikes that are violently expelled upon from the sky, dealing massive damage, which can kill Harry instantly on harder difficulties. This attack will warrant the use of health items if susceptible to taking damage and failure to evade attacks. The only reliable option in avoiding these attacks is running in a circle once the lightning strikes appear. However, this method of choice is difficult to perform as it's not always consistent. Once the sequence ends, Harry should use the hunting rifle as it has the best damage output for this boss fight. After a long, grueling battle, Harry finally defeats the Incubus, successfully killing the god as it dissipates and vanishes, reverting back to its previous form as the incubator. As the otherworld starts to collapse, a fading apparition of Alessa gives Harry a newly born baby, a reincarnation of both Alessa's and Cheryl's souls combined into one, warranting a new start for herself in hopes of a normal and healthy life that isn't riddled with pain and suffering. While hesitant, Harry accepts her offering. Shortly after, Alessa's apparition opens a portal to the real world, allowing Harry and Cybil to escape with the baby, leaving this nightmare finally behind. Nearby, Kaufmann realizes the other world is collapsing, and as he panics, he desperately walks towards the portal to escape. However, he is overwhelmed by Lisa Garland, seeking revenge for what Kaufmann did to her for all those years under the influence of the PTV drug. Lisa presumably kills Kaufmann as she drags him into the depths below of the other world. In her final moments, Alessa lies down defeated in the collapsing other world, with fire consuming her, ending her nightmares, and finally, letting her rest in peace. Harry and Cybil escape through the portal to the real world, with Harry holding the baby in his hands tightly, seen running through the foggy streets of Silent Hill. Upon escaping the town, Harry and Cybil are last seen in a cemetery, with Harry comforting the baby as Cybil looks at her warmly, both of them smiling in hopes of a better tomorrow. After the events of Silent Hill 1, it's unknown what happens to Cybil Bennett as it's left ambiguous. However, it can be speculated that she ends up leaving Bram's and assumes a new identity for herself. Elsewhere, Harry and Cheryl would end up living seemingly normal lives for the most part, as they move to Portland in hopes of starting a new life without any recollection or painful memories from Silent Hill. Fate would inevitably catch up to them, as the remaining cult members would hunt them down as a means to recapture the reincarnation of Alessa, seeing the family on the run for many years to follow. 5 years later, a cult member eventually found Harry and Cheryl living in Portland, forcing Harry to kill the cult member in self-defense. Because of this unforeseen event, Harry takes matters into his own hands and decides to change Cheryl's identity to Heather Mason, dyeing her hair blonde and relocating to a new location entirely. The family would end up living in Daisy Villa apartments in a city far away from Silent Hill. Now older, Harry would give Heather a birthday present on one of her birthdays, This present would be a pendant with a red jewel inside, crystallized with a red liquid. Harry urges Heather to take care of the pendant and to never take it off, as it's very important and will help her when necessary if and when that day comes. This pendant would hold Algoaphotis, presumably a contingency that Harry foresaw and want to ensure Heather's safety, in case she would ever have to go through the same events once again. Harry would end up raising Heather with the life that she deserved, one filled of joy and happiness. However, nothing lasts forever, but that is the story for another day. Thank you for watching. Please have a great day, stay safe, and goodbye.